John Rappaport of NoMoreFakeNews.com, he's had that URL for 15 years, exposing the fake news. Notice CNN doesn't want to use that term now because it keeps getting used against them. See, they think everything's a one-way street. They're so used to having air superiority, they think they're invincible. You don't have air superiority, globalist. They've jumped the shark trying to shut us down. But, John, I know you got a lot to cover today, but let me just ask you this. Why do you think InfoWars is undoubtedly even attacked more than Trump some days now? Myself lied about. I don't think it's that InfoWars is that important. I think it's all the guests and people we have on that are, this whole family, and that they're using us as a test case of how can they destroy somebody who's fearless and hopefully scare other people away. But I don't see that working anymore. John Rappaport, go ahead and take over, my friend, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alex. No, I think the answer is clear. It's independent media success that they're terrified of. Terrified, and I'll prove it to you as we go along in the remainder of this hour, because when you've got strong, powerful, expanding, geometrically expanding independent media like InfoWars, you've got places that can break stories that will expose the globalists in ways that keep them awake at night. And I'm not just talking about the ways that we all know about so far. I'm talking about ways that haven't even surfaced yet, that haven't come up yet, that are not in anybody's radar yet to a significant extent or enough of an extent. That's what they're afraid of, especially with InfoWars, because I remember talking with Alex on the phone, I think it was 2003 or 2 or something. We ended up doing a show together. So you look at the incredible variety of people that have been on the show that he's interviewed from all walks of investigative life. And the amount of exposure has been incredible. And what are we exposing? What's being exposed? What's being exposed is the false reality that is being painted every day by the globalist forces who intend to control your mind and make you believe that their version of the world and the universe is the only version. That's what they're doing. That's where they're going. That's where they've been going for a long time.
And John, we're going to skip this break and the one at the end of the hour, so you have like 6-7 more minutes here since I cut into your time today. But what do you make of Forbes and AP and Reuters all admitting, okay, aspartame eats your brain, and okay, SSRIs and major medical journals, you wrote about it for InfoWars this week, are causing cranial bleeding and strokes and death, you know, massive increases. And just everything we've ever talked about, because it was already in the medical journals, is now out there. That's why they have to shut us up. Because people know they get their news here years, months, or days before anywhere else. They get that at NoMoreFakeNews.com.
Absolutely. And as opposed to major media where the story just shows up and then sinks like a stone in one day.
We connect it all together.
Yeah, we connect it all together, and we keep pounding on it. Because why not? You know, that's what a sane person does.
Yeah, because, you know, you have a cousin that's 2 years old when you're a kid that takes a vaccine and has a, you know, aneurysm and dies, or you have another family member that takes a flu shot and almost dies, or you have another family member, you know, I mean, you kind of get pissed off about dying.
That's right. You look around and you see half the town is burning all around you. So, you know, the mainstream reporter says, well, let's do a piece on this for now, a short piece, and then we'll just forget about it. No, if you live in the town, you're not going to forget about it. Well, we all live in the town, folks. We all live in this, what I'm going to talk about here, especially the medical cartel town, where intracranial hemorrhaging, which means bleeding and dying from a highly touted antidepressants.
Why are you criticizing Death Town? Why are you criticizing Death Town? It's like a third of the sponsorship of mainstream news. How dare you?
That's right. That's right. You can't mess with our sponsors because otherwise we'll go down the toilet. Well, why do you have those sponsors in the first place if they're killing people left and right? Have you thought about that? No, we don't think about that. We just think about surviving. Well, let me tell you something. You're going down the drain. InfoWars and other independent media outlets are taking over. It's happening before your eyes, and there's nothing you can do about it. Doesn't matter what you try, it's going to survive, and it's going to get bigger and bigger.
I remember Piers Morgan, they were going to have me on 3 segments, but as soon as I brought up, don't blame guns. Most of these shootings, people are on SSRIs. They cut the interview right there. I said, your sponsors are selling mass murder pills.
Oh, I didn't see that on the interview. I wonder why. We got to get that comment. I wonder if somebody still got that on a camera somewhere or in a.
We can find it. Just Google Alex Jones accuses CNN of promoting mass murder pills.
Oh, great. Wow. Yeah.
Go ahead and take over, my friend.
Okay, Alex.
Listeners, I appreciate all your support. God bless you. I'll be watching.
Yeah, so look what arrived through my window here. I'm trying to figure out where this came from. Can you see this on the camera? This came in the window. A giant pigeon with a sign on it that said InfoWars brought this in the window, and now it's sitting here on my desk. It's called Caveman. It is a product from InfoWars. It's part of the marathon offerings here in defense of free speech, but not just in defense of. You buy products at the InfoWars store, and you support InfoWars. You support the InfoWar for truth as against lies, for waking people up as opposed to mind control. So listen to this. Ending soon, by the way, these mega specials. 30 off Brain Force Plus. That's 30%. 20 off Secret 12. 20 off Knockout. 20 off Winter Sun. 20 off Prostagard. 20% off BioPCA. 20% off Biome Defense. 20 off Living Defense. DNA Force is back in stock and quickly selling out. InfoWarsStore.com. That's InfoWarsStore.com. You buy products for your health. You support InfoWars and the InfoWar to crack the pillars of the fake reality that globalists have been trying to build for us that is falling down all around them, because our numbers are increasing and theirs are in severe decline. The only way that they survived, actually, during the election campaign was because of Trump. Because Trump was such a hot item in the press. All kinds of stations and mainstream news outlets began to see their ratings go up. So what did they do? We got to keep covering Trump. We got to keep covering Trump. It doesn't matter what we say, because our financial survival is on the line. This is the people who bring you the news. This is how they think. This is how they think. Okay, so let's get down to a few. I'm going to start off with a few medical stories, and then I'm going to build to a shattering climax here. So don't go anywhere, okay? First of all, the fact that I am on a media outlet at this very second that has millions of people listening and watching, and I am going to expose major crimes of the medical cartel, which is long-term the most powerful cartel of the globalist cartels, speaks to the nature of free speech, no censorship, and the increasing influence and power of InfoWars and other independent media outlets. Understand that the very fact that I'm sitting here doing this, whereas 10, 15 years ago, I don't know how many people would have been listening and watching. Now it's in the millions and growing all of the time. So in the last week, mind you, I've come up with this. New study in England exposes the war on cancer. This was a project. 29 cancer drugs for 47 cancer conditions, okay? Long-term project, funded with maybe $1 billion more. Okay, so what was the result of this? Well, it turns out nothing except poisoning patients, more suffering, more pain. The most they could squeeze out of this was to say that it increased the survival of cancer patients. We're talking about many cancer patients by 3.2 months of escalated intense suffering and pain because of the chemo drugs that they were being given. 29 drugs. This is chemical warfare. This is a war crime against the people of England. I hope you folks living in the UK listening to this understand that. That was exposed this week, okay? Antidepressants, SSRIs like Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, linked to increased risk of skull bleeding, interior of skull bleeding. Let's call that what it is. They call it intracranial hemorrhage. This is a near-death condition. If a person had intracranial bleeding and somehow knew about it, don't know how exactly, they would be instructed to call 911 immediately because death would be right around the corner. So these antidepressants, which have been hailed as the miracle drug, the latest kind of drug to increase feeling good, well-being, bringing people up out of depression, and all of the effects that the public has learned about over the years, mainly due to independent media, such as increased risk of suicide, increased risk of aggressive violence like homicide. Now we can add to the list skull interior bleeding, a condition causing death. Okay, that was another story this week from your medical cartel. All right, new drug for rare childhood disease called CLN2, a rare genetic fatal childhood disease. A new drug called Brineura will be selling for $700,000 a year. Oh, yeah. $700,000 a year. And because of their humane concern, the manufacturer is going to give discounts which will make the average price $486,000 per year per patient. Oh, well, thank you so much. We're down on our knees to you. Oh, yes, indeedy, we are. I'm going to tell you more about this drug, Brineura, after the break here. But needless to say, $700,000 a year is only the beginning of what this scandal is all about. Because is this really, for example, a rare genetic disease, or is it something else entirely? We'll get into that, as well as what can this drug actually do for anybody. So stay with us here at InfoWars.
Finished. You will not take my right. You go through background checks to get guns. How about Prozac? You know the number one. Oh, that's the big sponsor, isn't it? Or that whole class of drugs.
Let me ask you a question.
Oh, whoa, got to cut that off, don't you? Don't want to talk about the U.S. number one cause of death is suicide now because they give people suicide murder pills.
Calm down.
Your answer is give more money to the psychiatrists and psychologists to put more crazy people on drugs that make them kill people, Pierce.
Let's try and have a debate here.
Yeah.
Answer me this.
John Rappaport sitting in for Alex in the fourth hour here. Got a little glitch there. You saw the clip. That was real. That actually happened. That was on CNN. Ah, yes, CNN. We love CNN. They expose themselves all the time. They're into self-exposure. This is not a mental disorder. No, there's no stigma attached if CNN wants to expose itself all the time. Okay, fine. And they just did. But they didn't air that clip, of course, because there Alex was talking about, well, your sponsors are psychiatric drugs, these SSRI antidepressants that cause people to go out and kill other people or commit suicide. It's not the guns. Look at the drugs. You don't want to talk about, do you? No, Piers, you don't want to talk about that because those are the people that are financing you and the network paying your weekly checks. And not just CNN, all over the place. These people, they're restrained. They're in straitjackets. Even if they wanted to break out, they couldn't because of who their sponsors are. But we don't have to worry about that. We do not have to worry about that. So I was talking before the break about a new drug for a, quote, rare childhood genetic disease considered to be rapidly progressing and fatal. Okay, and they call this disease CLN2, okay, and the drug that's just been approved is called Brineura, okay? These are medical scandals that I just found in the last week, okay? Now, what about this drug? Well, what does it do? Well, it costs $702,000 a year per patient, and the company as I said, humanely has decided to lower the price through discounts, and the average price will be only $486,000 per patient. We love you all. Only going to charge you $486,000 per patient per year. Okay, great, fabulous. Now, the drug actually does the following, according to the FDA. It slows down the progression, get this, of one symptom of this disease. And that symptom is the inability to walk. A child who supposedly has this disease definitely has trouble walking. Well, how many episodes of having trouble walking does the child experience in a month or 2 months? Well, we can say that this drug decreases the number of such episodes of not being able to walk. That's all it does. That's it. That's why it was approved. That's why it costs $702,000 a year. So it doesn't cure the disease. It doesn't even slow down the disease, according to the FDA. It's just, we think, yeah, it will decrease the number of episodes of having trouble walking. And for that, you pay $702,000 a year. Not only that, folks, but we now look at some of the symptoms that the FDA lists here. Now, get this. Don't go away. Pay attention. Come on, use your brains. Here are some of the symptoms: language delay, seizures, lack of coordination, muscle twitches. Does that sound familiar to you in any way? Have you been paying attention to medical news over the last however many years? Those of you in the know will understand that this sounds a lot like vaccine damage. Say that again. Vaccine damage. Vaccine damage. Indeed, you do. But they're saying, oh, it's a rare genetic disease, CLNN2. Yes, that's what it is. Vaccine damage. Well. Here's what a kid who's already suffering, really suffering, is going to be subjected to if they take this drug. Every 2 weeks, 90 minutes in the doctor's office with an infusion port inserted in the child's head to receive 90 minutes of this drug, Brineura, plus other drugs that the child will receive at the time, every other week, to reduce maybe the incidence of one symptom of the disease at a price tag of anywhere between $480,000 and $702,000 a year. And this is called medical treatment. Okay? All right. So what have we covered here? This is this week's news, right? All right. So we talked about a new study in the UK which destroys the UK war on cancer, torturing patients with drugs, pain, suffering, chemo drugs that are useless, maybe increase the lifespan 3.2 months of intense suffering. Price tag on the whole project over $1 billion. Total failure. Okay. Antidepressants linked to internal skull bleeding condition. Death right around the corner. What else? Brineura, this $702,000 drug for the treatment of one symptom of what sounds a lot like a vaccine damage. Yes, indeed you do. And then we had this 18,000 lawsuits lining up. That's 18,000 lawsuits lining up against the very popular blood-thinning drug Xarelto. Yes. 18,000 lawsuits from patients who are now asserting that they've been injured very badly. And the first lawsuit is scheduled to go off this coming week in New Orleans, where the plaintiff, Joseph Boudreau, is saying needed blood transfusions after taking the drug, had to go to the hospital, okay, and had multiple heart procedures done in the hospital, all because of taking this drug. Indeed, you do. That's a week's worth of medical stuff here, okay? Now let's expand the picture. What are we talking about? The medical cartel. The medical cartel. What is that? Medical schools, doctors, drug companies, public health agencies like the FDA, the CDC, the National Institutes of Health, research laboratories, doctors associations like the AMA, medical journals. Okay? Getting the picture, all of this together. All of this together. World Health Organization and so forth. Very, very, very powerful. Now, as I've documented over the years, many, many times, death and destruction emanating from the medical cartel, chapter and verse, the numbers, and so on and so forth. And the members of the medical cartel, including now we can also include media medical reporters, mainstream media medical reporters, stand by and do nothing. FDA does nothing. The government does nothing. As these drugs maim, kill, destroy lives in America, in the West, in industrialized countries, in non-industrialized countries, all over the world, right? And the vaccines as well, with harmful, toxic ingredients, just like the drugs, like formaldehyde, like aluminum, like mercury, yes, still mercury, known poisons. The medical cartel poisons the world. You want a caption? The medical cartel poisons the world. Behind such sophisticated propaganda that people prefer to believe, still many, many, many people prefer to believe that the medical cartel is an angel flying in on wings to save the planet. That's quite an ability to turn people's minds off and put them on programming to turn that around. So, here's a fact. I broadcast it, written about it many, many times. It's based on a completely mainstream study all the way along the line, no fringe characters, no independents even. Journal of the American Medical Association, July 26, 2000. The review is called, Is U.S. Health Really the Best in the World? You can look it up. Dr. Barbara Starfield was the author. I've interviewed her. At the time, she was a revered and honored public health expert at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. Okay? Got it? Her conclusion, and she told me that was a conservative estimate. Every year in the U.S., the medical system kills 225,000 people. Okay? So let that sink into your pores and your brain and your cells and so forth. Every year in the U.S., the medical system kills 225,000 people. We're not even talking yet about maiming millions of people, but the death toll. So if you do a little bit of arithmetic and you extrapolate that out to a decade, how many medical killings are we talking about? Pop quiz. Give you 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. 2.25 million killings per decade in America alone at the hands of the medical system. From the drugs, from errors in hospitals, from treatment in hospitals. Okay? Break that down. Every year in the U.S., according to this review, 106,000 people killed by the pharmaceutical drugs alone, so that would extrapolate out to 1.06 million killings per decade at the hands of the medical cartel. Poisoning, in other words, in the drugs. Poisoning in the drugs. Mainstream media cover this? No. Not at all. Biggest story they would ever cover. Biggest of their lives. This is why all these reporters, when they were still young and had ideals, went to journalism school, because someday I'm going to get a story that's going to provide justice across the board, and it's going to be such a hot story at the same time that I can be deployed for 6, 8 months, a year, 2 years to invade the medical cartel in every nook and cranny and drag people out kicking and screaming and obtaining confessions from them at the FDA, at the CDC, at NIH, in doctors' offices, at the World Health Organization, everywhere. They will finally confess to their crimes and they'll say, we did nothing about it. We turned a blind eye. You want to call that reckless indifference? You want to call that negligent homicide? I call it what it is. When you stand by and you know this is what's happening, when you aid and abet it, that's a murder. It's murder. It's mass murder. That's what we're talking about. Mass murder, okay? So now I will try to boil down my latest piece at No More Fake News today, which was titled, Why Isn't There a Medical Edward Snowden? And this is what I mean. A consummate insider inside the medical cartel. I'm talking about inside the pharmaceutical complex, inside the CDC, or inside the FDA, inside of the inside, like Snowden was at the NSA, who collects reams of data, emails, memos, documents, the whole 9 yards. I'm not talking about a doctor who left the profession because he was, that's great. Willing to tell the truth for the first time. Not talking about the whistleblower at the CDC, William Thompson. We're talking about somebody who is much further on the inside with data on the whole shooting match, what I'm talking about here, who steps out into the open. And all of this is published, and the entire poisonous globalist medical cartel is exposed to the light of day for the world, the entire planet to see. We have no such person. We don't. I would know. If there is, he's still contemplating coming forward. And the big question, and screw in your brains on this, folks, come on. Why not? Why don't we have an Edward Snowden of the medical cartel? And a lot of people say, well, because he knows he would be killed if he stepped out. Yeah, well, that's true of many areas of whistleblowers who feel that they're risking their lives, and yet they do step forward. So that argument doesn't wash. Sorry. Why don't they step out into the light of day? Well, let me give you the secret and the answer. Snowden stepped out into the light of day with at least a reasonable assurance, if not more, that there was some mainstream journalist out there who was going to connect with him and was going to reveal at least some of what he had taken from the National Security Agency. But in the case of a consummate medical Edward Snowden, there is no such guarantee, because major medical media and major media in general will blacklist, censor, destroy, turn a blind eye to, and never publish. Chances are very high that such a really consummate medical inside whistleblower would never have his data, all the emails, the memos, the documents that prove the collusion, that they're inventing diseases, that they're inventing poisonous cures, that they're lying about phony epidemics in order to force people to go in for vaccinations that are completely unnecessary and toxic. The whole deal, right? The whole deal. The conspiring and all of that, the documents that prove it. There is a very high probability that no major media outlet would go after and publish any of that. And so, what is an insider of the dimensions of, say, a Bill Binney or an Edward Snowden at the NSA, who's a medical cartel insider, faced with the prospect of risking everything of his, including his life, against the very strong probability that it will never see the light of day in major media? That's why, take this one to the bank, that's why we don't have a medical cartel, Edward Snowden. And that's why the Rockefeller medicine, globalist medicine, medical cartel is still standing. And what is their plan, and what is their agenda, and what do they aim to do, and what are they doing as we speak? If you don't already know, they have created and they're continuing to expand a womb to cradle to grave system for every human on Earth. Every human on Earth will pass along a bleak line, be diagnosed with 30 or 40 diseases, disorders in the course of a lifetime, and be treated with highly toxic poisons called medicines, which will confuse, debilitate, weaken, destroy, maim that person, meaning every human. That's the agenda, and therefore make the human population of Earth that much more easy to control. The circumstantial case is there for what I just said. The depraved indifference, the collusion to produce poisons that are called medical drugs, that we have documented that are killing gigantic numbers and maiming gigantic numbers of people. And this is going on, and nobody in the mainstream, not only the press, but inside the medical establishment or the federal government of the U.S. or any other government on Earth is willing to step up and expose it, means that we are talking about massive collusion to maintain this cradle-to-grave structure, to expand it, to use it, to control the population of the planet to such a degree that they are too weak to resist. That's the plan. That's what I've been able to talk about for the last 45, 50 minutes on a media outlet called InfoWars that now has millions of listeners and viewers every day. You don't think the seesaw is tilting in our direction? You don't think that this is taking off like a rocket? You don't think that the sun has come up on a new day? Because the day will come very soon, if it is not already here, where a medical Edward Snowden sitting in the middle of the medical cartel will know in his bones and his mind that he doesn't need the New York Times to publish all his documents, doesn't need the Washington Post, doesn't need CBS, doesn't need the Guardian, doesn't need any of that. He can go to InfoWars and any number of other powerful independent media outlets that are now in existence, who will gobble up what he has, present it wholesale to the world, where people can analyze and expose the crimes of the medical cartel for years and years and years to come on a daily basis. That day is already here. It's already here. And that potential percolating Edward Snowden in the heart of the medical cartel, who, according to his sacred oath to do no harm, to aid in healing, to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the liberties that it is engendering, my prediction, will come forward, will perceive that he can come forward and get the exposure that he needs in order to present the truth that has been held away from planet Earth about this massive medical cartel operation that includes the drugs, the vaccines, the hospitals, and so on and so forth. The Rockefeller modern medicine that kicked off early in the 20th century with the famous Flexner report that decided that all of the competition, good, bad, and ugly, had to be eliminated, and a new brand of pharmaceutical medicine had to become born. And it did, and it developed, and it evolved into what we have now. A killing machine. Killing machine. The public is going to learn, and is learning as we speak. Key point, folks. The difference between competent medical operators doing the right thing, picking a guy up off the street where he's just been blown apart by a car wreck, bringing him to the hospital and putting him together through correctly applied medical procedures. In other words, acute crisis medicine. That whole thing over there, which is eminently successful when it's done well by competent people as opposed to slobs. Okay? Versus the long-term care scenario that I just laid out for you of the medical treatment over a person's lifetime. We diagnose you with this. We treat you with that toxic drug. You develop new symptoms. We diagnose those symptoms as a new medical condition that requires more treatment with more toxic drugs that causes more debilitating effects that we then diagnose as a brand new condition that must be treated with more and more toxic drugs and so on and so forth down the hill to severe illness, decline, and death. Those are two separate things. And I'll close on this. The genius of the medical cartel is the propaganda wing, which confuses the two and blurs those two elements of the medical complex so that the public believes that one is like the other and the other is like the first and so on and so forth. Absolute falsity, not true. I hope your understanding here has been tracking with me. This is part of the marathon to defend free speech, the truth, the InfoWar, Infowars.com, to help InfoWars survive.
What the aging process is when the cell replicates, we lose a little bit of our telomeres. Telomeres are the little cups on the end of our chromosomes.
And when it runs out, you start dying. Secure your DNA force today at InfoWarsLife.com.